You can feel and see the moments where something lands in their system where they know that they're going to be okay, and something is reawakening with either remembering who they are or remembering that they have innate power and innate wisdom.
Welcome to Intuition Unlocked, the podcast for women who feel overwhelmed, stretched thin, or disconnected from themselves and are craving a deeper return to who they are. We explore how to reconnect with your intuition, live more in tune with your natural rhythms and the world around you, and help you learn to deeply nourish your body, mind, spirit, and inner self so you can move through life with more clarity, confidence, and a grounded sense of self-trust. I'm your host, Olivia Ashley, and I am so glad you're here. Hello, and welcome back to Intuition Unlocked. I'm truly so honored to have you here with me today because we are diving into a conversation that feels both deeply grounding and expansive. We are exploring how creativity and the body can become powerful pathways back to your intuition, your truth, and your sense of self. My guest for today's conversation is Cathy Williams, an award-winning author, speaker, and the founder of Intuitive Self, where she guides individuals through somatic and expressive art practices to help them reconnect with their inner wisdom. With over 17 years of experience in body-based healing, creative arts therapy, and social impact work, Cathy brings a deeply compassionate and integrative approach to healing and self-discovery. In this episode, you're going to hear us explore how creativity becomes a language for listening inward, why reconnecting with your body is essential for intuition and healing, and how these practices help open a door to deeper, more sacred connection, not only with yourself, but with the world around you. This conversation is a beautiful invitation to soften, explore, and to reconnect with the wisdom already within you. So settle in, and I hope you enjoy this conversation with Cathy Williams. Welcome, Cathy, to Intuition Unlocked. I'm so grateful and excited to have you here in this space with me today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Olivia. It's really beautiful to be connected.
Agreed. It's so fun. We were talking about how you're in Australia and I'm here in Colorado, completely two different days. How fun is that? So we'll dive right into it because I want to hear all about your work that weaves together movement, creativity, intuition, and body awareness in such a unique way, which I was really drawn to. And I'd love to have you begin with the moment or even the season in your life when you first realized that creative expression could actually help you reconnect to yourself.
Mm. Okay, so this was many, many moons ago. Uh, I was at a point in my life where I had just come back to Melbourne, to Australia, from many years overseas. And the work I'd been doing overseas it started off amazing. I was doing community development work. I was working in developing communities, and I had beautiful but intense experiences living in community and working on capacity building programs, basically. And in a lot of those roles, I was in leadership positions and I was responsible for volunteers and responsible for other people. And it had come off the back of learning about different things that were happening, different challenges that were happening to women and children, and this feeling of moral obligation I felt to be involved and to get involved somehow, not just from a reading about it perspective, but a hands-on grassroots level. And I love that I was drawn to that work, and I love that I had all these opportunities to really get in there on a ground level. But what it had done was I had done back-to-back projects, one after the other. And in hindsight, I realized that I was really wanting to involve myself and give back in a way that was what I probably really wanted and needed as a child, And I had also recognized the ways in which I had kept myself so busy, so overproductive that I wasn't really stopping to pause and to feel and to digest all of the different stories that I was hearing, all of the different experiences that I had seen and been part of. And when I came back to Melbourne, I felt quite jaded. I felt quite burnt out from the work I'd been doing. And I was kind of in this crossroads of, okay, do I look for a job? Do I find another project overseas? Like what am I doing? And a friend of mine invited me to what essentially was a women's circle. And I didn't really have an idea of what the day was going to involve or what the intention was, but I really trusted this friend of mine and she knew the facilitator. We came to this hall and it was a beautiful, like sunlit hall, and there was a drum, there was music, there was creative arts available, and the invitation wasn't to sit in circle and talk, which is more of that traditional women's circle, but rather to feel whatever it was that was most present for us that we'd all sort of rocked up with, and to give it this space, to give ourselves full permission to really feel what was there and express it through dancing to the music and through putting it out onto the paper. And I think this space opened up within me where I didn't have to find words to try and capture all of the helplessness and the burnt outness that I'd been feeling. But I really was able to tune in with my body and be like, wow, this this tiredness, this lethargy has come from somewhere, and get curious about that and really give my body and my subconscious this platform to express. And it was in that way that I was so taken by these modalities and what was allowed in this space, and got really curious about it after that because for a lot of my life I'd done traditional talk therapy and it had been quite helpful. But in that particular season, I needed something that allowed me to express in a different way. And that's what came through. And that was the moment that I was like, oh, there is another way that we can engage with ourselves.
Oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. I mean, can we just sit in reverence somewhat for that and understanding what a beautiful container that offered you and a different way of feeling. Like I'm sure everyone can resonate with that story of feeling so disconnected, tired, exhausted, but not really knowing why. But you went into that space and it wasn't even about needing to know why. It was more the feeling. It was the understanding, the groundedness of, whoa, all of that's living within me and I can move it and shift it. And so when you begin exploring these practices even more deeply, what surprised you most about what the body or this creative expression was able to reveal to you?
Mm. Yeah, I love that distinction that you picked up on. It's like I felt like for a lot of my life, living in the cerebral, like living in my mind, I'd always been trying to find a solution to any problem. So I was trying to make my experiences make sense and then work out how do I fix the problem and then solve it. Whereas in this space and with these modalities, it was really being in the felt sense and being in the body. And I guess the biggest thing that surprised me was that I was actually starting to listen to the body and starting that what I now call a dialogue with the body, where I was being curious. I wasn't trying to fix any problem or, solve something straight away. I was like, oh, I'm really quite tired. What does my body need right now? And I was able to hold myself in that moment. I was able to express some of the sadness that I had been suppressing previously.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. The body has so much wisdom and understanding, and yet I think we forget. I think we're taught in our society to look at ourselves almost like a machine or to be able to pick out its pieces and its parts and just tend to the one or two things. But in reality, it's this really incredible ecosystem that once you understand, makes it a lot easier to tend and to support. And before we shift more into the body, I want to talk more about creativity because I think that's a really important aspect of of what opens the door into your body as well. Lots of things can, but I think creativity and expression, everything we're going to talk about today can. But we often want to say creativity is for kids or artists. It's not for those who are professional and in their working woman space. But your work really suggests that creativity is actually this natural human language. And I think that's beautiful. So I want to ask you, what changes in someone when they stop trying to perform creativity or feel like it's outside of themselves and start using it as a way to listen to themselves? And how can maybe they start to do that?
Oh, that's so beautiful. Yes, I'm a huge advocate for, you don't have to be an artist. I feel like there's a lot of resistance that happens when, oh no, I don't dance. I'm not a dancer. Oh, I'm not gonna play with the pastels or the paint. I'm not an artist. And it's this self-talk and these expectations that we have of ourselves, and I guess society has of us, or what it means when we pick up some pastels or we pick up some drawing pencils. What I really love to encourage is that, play and creativity is abundant with possibilities, and being able to connect with ourselves and create moments where we can just get curious about what wants to come out on the page and not have a finished product or an end product in mind, but rather be in this process of, okay, I'm gonna see what colors I'm drawn to, and then I'm gonna let my fingers and my hands play on the page. And the beauty of this, and the beauty of what I found when I started, was that you can make meaning of what comes out, but you can also just be in this joyful process of creating. And both of them and all of the layers in between are so special for what it allows in your body, for what it allows in, I call it functional meditation. It's like I was never one that was able to really sit still. I always had to be doing something. So when I sit at my table and I start to play with different colors, lines, and shapes, my mind has a break, my body is able to play, but the different images that come out onto the page, there's also special meaning for them there. And I was able to start connecting with my subconscious and start connecting with different messages from within my imagination and within myself that was able to act as metaphors, and different meaning came forth that I was able to take from.
I love that. I almost want you just to tell me more about that process or how that's really helped you connect to intuition and maybe talk a little bit about intuition of what does that look like in your life? How has getting into this functional meditative space and getting creative and turning off our monkey minds helped and supported you on your path?
Yeah. So the monkey mind for me was, it showed up in ways that I felt really safe only in my mind. And I had really disconnected from my body and really disconnected from play. And I felt that if I was able to be in my mind and think about everything, ruminate on everything, overanalyze everything, then I could be in control. And feeling like I was in control felt safe to me. And so when I started getting familiar and getting curious about these different modalities, I recognized that, oh, I'd only been giving preference to the mind, and I'd forgotten about all these other parts of self that make up who I am. And I love what you said before about, we need to be able to bring everyone to the party when we need to work really holistically. Because I'd been living solely in my mind, I felt like I had, well, from a young age, I knew that my intuition had been pretty strong. But I think over time, from different conversations I had with people, from different comments made by people in my circle, whether that's family or people I met along the way, I really started to doubt this wise part of myself. And I can look back on particular situations or events in my life and recognize that my intuition had been showing up, my intuition had been there, and that might have been, through a feeling in my gut that maybe I couldn't necessarily explain, but I knew that something was off. But in that same moment, when I felt that, I also allowed my mind to come in and dismiss that feeling or override that feeling and be like, oh no, I'll give that person the benefit of the doubt, or oh no, it can't be that bad. The way that we talk to ourselves, and this way that I had shut down, actively shut down my intuition. So when I started to reconnect with my body intentionally and play with creative expression, it was almost like I was giving my intuition a voice. I was giving my intuition a platform to come through. And I got really curious about this. I got really curious about, oh, my intuition, what is that to me? What does that look like? And my intuition now, the way that I describe her, and I like to personify it, my intuition as a her, is that, my intuition is an ally. I work in partnership with my intuition. And when I take intentional pauses to check in with, oh, how do I feel about that? Is that a yes or is that a no? And instead of letting the mind drive the bus, so to speak, I take my mind into consideration, but I also then start to take in what's my intuition saying? How does my body feel in response to this? And does my heart have anything to share here? And sort of let all parts of me speak so that I'm moving forward in a way that feels more aligned and feels more harmonious.
That's beautiful. What a beautiful way to let everything coexist and let everything
Mm,
have a voice. And because we don't want to lose the mind, but we need it to be a little bit quieter so we can hear ourselves. And I just keep feeling like in my body like resistance. There's a resistance in our culture, in our society, to actually allow that to happen, to actually move past whether it's a block or a fear, or just shift how we've been operating. How can people begin to move through that to allow all of this to coexist?
mm. Yeah, there's some really beautiful ways that we can start to get curious about these parts of ourselves. And I like to call them entry points. And obviously for everyone, it can be different depending on what we've experienced, to what season of life we're in. And where I always like people to start and what I encourage is we need to be able to feel safe enough in our body to be able to presence the body in the space. Because for whatever reason, it might be our response to something traumatic in life, it might be because of something that our body has endured. We do have a tendency to, as a way of coping, to disconnect from self and to dissociate from the body. And that's our way of keeping ourselves safe. So to come back to a place where we can gently start to get curious about that and gently start to reconnect and feel safe enough in the body, that is often where I start with women that I get to work with. And the starting point a lot of the time is bringing our awareness to the body. So when we've been living solely in our mind or we have disconnected from the body, it's often hard to presence the body. There's a numbness there that we don't have access to this part of self. So some of the entry points are actually bringing in the body in the space. So getting people to connect with the body, and that could be feeling the shape of their body in the space right now on the chair, feeling their weight, connecting with the breath, knowing that there's nothing that we need to do or be or change, but rather just bringing that acknowledgement to the breath. You know, what's the pace of your breath at the moment? Where do you feel your breath going to in the body? And can we bring in some touch to the body? And when we start to expand our awareness with the body and presence the body in this way, this could be a really familiar feeling for someone, or it could be really heightening. So we're also in the same breath bringing in safety containers, and I call them anchors. So for someone to bring awareness to their body, that might be really uncomfortable. So how do we provide safety for ourselves? And a lot of the time that is, bringing in somatic touch, bringing in ways that we can hold ourselves or bring awareness to the body through safe touch. And that isn't me putting my hands on people, that is them having the agency to bring their hands to themselves and get that feedback from the body. So that might be, getting curious about, okay, what touch feels really safe and comforting and nourishing in this moment? For someone, that could be the squeezing of the body and that self massage. For another person, it might be really gentle caresses and actually getting curious about what is that feedback and what feels good. And with my guidance, we're finding the anchor points and finding the entry points to then be able to feel safe enough to go deeper and to go further.
That's so beautiful. And I can feel the power in that. I love the word agency that you use of allowing that, giving yourself agency when often I think we don't have a lot of agency in our lives, but remembering and reminding ourselves that yes, we do, and letting it anchor us is so incredible. So I want to keep talking more about body wisdom because you use that word in a lot of your work. And I want to understand more of what happens when we start listening to the body instead of overriding it. Are there messages or guidance that we begin to notice because of that relationship?
Yes, there is. Absolutely. So I think that the strongest thing that comes through when people start to become aware of their body and presence the body in this way and connect with self really intentionally. And when I say that, I mean, finding pauses and moments during their day to do a body scan and just check in with self. And if there's been a numbness there, when we start to bring our attention and intention to the body in that way, then we start to pick up on, oh, there's some different sensations that are alive for me right now. And that deepens our connection. A lot of what I feel and say as body wisdom is when we start to presence the body, we then start to get these signals from the body. So in any one moment, we can check in with the self, be like, okay, how are we feeling right now? And that awareness might come through in different sensations. It might come through in noticing different emotions, emotional states that are rising or that are heaviest at the moment. And with this, we're able to then go deeper with, okay, what's happening for us? Is that something in this current situation that we're in that we're finding uncomfortable, or is it a memory from the past? Are we having a particular response because of something? And we can get really curious about what's going on here. What is fascinating about this work is that most of the time, we haven't given ourselves any space, or when we speak about agency, any permission to really allow ourselves to feel our feelings here. A lot of the time, we haven't learned how to feel our feelings safely through the body. And there is often a big fear around, well, if I do, take the lid off everything that I've been suppressing, will I be able to cope? Will I collapse in a heap? Because we can't collapse in a heap, yeah? We have to be functional, where we have to show up for our work. We have to show up as caregivers for our children, our partners, our parents. We have to be able to keep going. And so I know that this work can be quite intimidating, and I know from my own lived experience of, I thought that to function I needed to suppress everything. But I also learned that what we suppress, our body still carries, and what we run from or shy away from then becomes our shadow, so to speak. So, what I encourage women to do and what I support women to do is, how do we find containers where we can feel safe? have our anchor points that we can resource ourselves when big feelings come, and how can we create pockets of time within our day to day and within our weeks where we're able to feel like we have the capacity to feel what comes up, to give expression to it in the moment, and then find ways that work for us where we can process what's happening and therefore also be able to keep functioning and keep moving in life and what we're navigating. When we speak about different messages that come through in the body, that curiosity lens is really important. So instead of going straight to what I used to do and go straight to, okay, what's the problem here? How do I solve it? How do I switch it off? How do I get back to functioning? By creating that space and that pocket where we're able to feel what comes up and give expression to it, whether that is through, a body pat down or a body brush down, whether that's through what I call an impulse stretch. So actually allowing the body to intuitively move and express whatever that is. So whether that is, shaking ourselves out or stomping our feet, we're finding ways to release along the way. And if we can then find time to do some creative reflective practices, so bringing in the creative expression on the page or journaling or even through voice work, we're allowing ourselves this space to express, and then different perspectives come through that are so helpful and supportive. And that's the most surprising part, is that when we allow ourselves to get really curious about what's going on, we can get support from the wisdom that our body's holding. So, an example of that is someone might be trying to make a decision between two things. So, one of the exercises that I encourage people to do, it's called decision making spaces, and it's in my book. And maybe you'll have different spaces in your room, and the left side of the space is yes, the right side of the space is no. And with your body, you move through those two spaces and you feel into, okay, how do I feel when I'm in this space? How does my body respond when I'm in this space? And do I feel good? Is that the feeling that I want to cultivate? Or what resistance is showing up? And we can play with that. And it's really fascinating what intuitive answers come through that we might not necessarily have got to if we were just using the mind to solve that challenge.
Yes. Oh man, this is so good. And it really reminds me that this work is so essential to whether it's growing or healing or transforming or just being a better, more embodied human. I mean, it's so fascinating how much wisdom there is available to us once we can understand it or we learn it. So, for someone wanting to deepen their intuitive or spiritual connection, how can embodiment or body based practices really open that doorway?
For me, I feel like they're all connected. So we all have different theories about spirituality and everything. And for me, I recognize that I am a soul and that I also have a higher self, and there's all wisdom that comes through there and a knowing that comes through there. But we also live on earth in these bodies that are here for us. How am I able to sort of combine the two is actually through these modalities. So when I put some music on and I'm moving intuitively, I'm letting my body feel the feelings and I'm just having a play. And when I'm journaling and when I'm drawing and putting different images out on the paper, that is how I connect to spirit. That is how I connect to my higher self, to the wisdom within and the wisdom of a higher being, so to speak. For me, it's multi-layered. So it could be just to brush off myself between meetings or between clients, to transition from a work day into home life, but it also has a sacredness to it, a sacredness of connecting to myself again and cultivating love and kindness and compassion to all the parts of myself that for multiple reasons I was harsh to or I spoke poorly towards in the past, and actually learning to love and accept all parts of myself. And it's a very, I guess, deep and intentional way of bringing in spiritual practices that are ritualistic in the way that I choose to connect to those different parts of myself, speak to different parts of myself. There's also, I guess, prayer and surrender in that. So when I have been in seasons of deep grief, for example, and my body feels so much, yes, I can express it. I can put it back into the earth through movement. I can draw and create different symbols that come through that become strength symbols that give me a sense of power and a sense of knowing to keep moving and to keep striving forward. But I can also give it back to Mama Earth through the songs that come through the movement that comes through with the different elements. And it feels deeply connective because I don't feel so alone in my experience. I feel like I have spirit backing me. I have Mother Earth supporting me and helping me transmute a lot of the emotions that come through, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. And I want you to expand on that and personally define a sacred connection. What does that look like? What does that mean to you? How does all of this weave together in the way that it does? And why does this seem to go hand in hand so naturally? Creativity and the body and the earth and spirit, right? I think there's something really beautiful here that we can explore.
Mm. Sacred connection for me is, I guess, feeling held, feeling supported, and whether that is me to me and me to my body and my heart, or whether that is something that is larger to me with spirit holding me. What movement and creative expression has done is actually strengthen that sacred connection. So I have explored many different spiritualities and religions in reading different texts, but the one that feels the most truest to me came through this exploration. So, whether that is through different guided meditations and visualizations where I used my imagination and the mind's eye to see what came through. There were different images of grandmother spirits that came and different nature-based symbols that came through. And I would often feel, a particular sense of connection in my body, but then in the drawings, what came through was different images that I had seen. And they felt like guides. They felt like my support team showing up in different ways. And that sacred connection felt like, oh, I've got a team of wise elders, let's call them, behind me. And I don't think that that's something that I could have found in another way. For me and my system and my field and how I move through the world and what I connect with, that's how they came through. And there's something really beautiful in my spirituality, and my connection with spirit is such a personal one that I've not really spoken about before. Almost like, an old witch's wound, like you feel like you have to defend what that is and what that means to you. But what these modalities have allowed is different pathways and different entry points to deepening that sacred connection. And that sacred connection, not only with myself and my concept of spirit, but also the earth and the different elements. Yeah, sacred connection to me is like a magic that exists where I feel deep capacity to trust how life is unfolding and to trust my capacity to be able to handle all the different obstacles and the ebb and flow of what life throws at us, and to trust that I'll be okay through that. And yes, there'll be moments of doubt, and yes, there'll be moments of insecurity and moments of questioning where, again, I slip back into the mind and needing to solve whatever comes up. But there's a surrendering there that as I allow and as I move with curiosity and move with trust, that things will work out.
Yes, I love that. That was such a beautiful offering that you just gave to us. And what it made me see and think about is there is something that's being remembered between many of us throughout this world, many of the women I connect to, and that we're all kind of singing a similar but different song. Like we're needing to unroot this ancient way of life, of connection, of remembering that it seems like we've lost. There is some loss that has happened through generations of the connection, the reciprocity, the support that is always available to us. And I'm curious why and what do you sense with this? It feels like a rebirth, this renaissance, this revolution of sorts of reminding each of us of our own innate power, but also the beauty and the power that comes from being witnessed and remembered and supported from spirit, from the earth, from our sisters, and everything in between.
Mm, you spoke to that so beautifully. It does feel like a remembering. And I think what's so powerful around this time, and I see it. I see it at women's festivals, in workshops. I see it at the workshops where I run, where people don't know each other. They've come there because they've followed an impulse, a call, and that is their sacred space to connect deeper with themselves and connect with their intuition or spirit, or I guess they're interchangeable sometimes as well. And there is, you can feel and see the moments where something lands in their system where they know that they're going to be okay, and something is reawakening with either remembering who they are or remembering that they have innate power and innate wisdom. And for multiple reasons in how society was created and the different systems that we work within, that was suppressed and that was shut down. And it's almost like we are trying to white ant the system and still remember this power and still shine really brightly despite all of the adversity that we're up against. And I think what this work does, and what I encourage women, that whatever they feel drawn to, follow that impulse. Yeah, because there's something there. That's what happened to me. I went to this women's circle, and the movement and the creative expression spoke to me. So I followed that impulse. And that's where my connection to spirit further unfolded for me and got deeper and deeper. But that could look different for everyone. That could be through gardening and having these moments out in nature. That could be through windsurfing, like whatever it is, follow that impulse, because that will lead you back to your intuition and strengthening that part of yourself and that connection and dialogue with the intuition, where I feel like, particularly around this time and this evolution revolution that is unfolding, we have moments and signals where our intuition is speaking to us. And we just need to relearn how to listen to that part of ourselves and be reminded of our power and our gifts and in what ways we can best serve them.
Yes, absolutely. Because so many traditional cultures, art, movement, rituals, those were built in. That was built into our daily life. And I think we've lost parts of ourselves or lost what's possible, the power that you speak of when we forget that or when we don't have those anchors in that way to be able to tend to. And so I'm curious how bringing those aspects back into life, but also as a gift to others. I think of your work bringing people together. Where does that move us? Where does that take us?
What comes to mind immediately is feeling a strength of self and a confidence to make decisions in life that feel most aligned to to who we are, who we want to be, and who we want to become in this world. When we start to reconnect with our body and get curious about our intuition, find moments for joy and creative expression and play, and take sacred moments to be with spirit or to be with ourselves in this intentional way, our remembering gets clearer. We get a lot of clarity over different ways of being. We might have had a lot of anxiety, we might have had a lot of mind rumination, we might feel really lethargic and we're just going through the motions. But when we start to just pepper in little moments, and I'm talking little moments because that's what's really achievable for us, is, taking some sacred moments, even when we're in the shower, to wash our body with gratitude. And as we're soaping ourselves, we're thanking the body for all that it's carried. These little pockets of gratitude and little pockets of connection, they start to expand in us that we are magnificent beings, that we are wise, beautiful creatures. And we start to really embody with confidence the woman that we are or that we want to become. And when we start to really presence her and feel into her, I think it's like it's a no-brainer. We want to be with her more. We want to let her out more. We want to give her permission to be louder, to take up more space. And as we do that, we naturally start to feel into, okay, what's working for me in my world or not? And that could be, oh, is this job working for me? Are these connections, these relationships, these friendships, are they working for me? Are they supportive? Are they bringing out the best in me? And we can start to, with love, tend to the different areas of our life that aren't feeling good and actively make changes towards the life that we want and what we're trying to cultivate, whether that's in relationship or community or our creative projects or our business. And it's been so beautiful to track and observe the changes with the women that come to my workshops or that I get to work with one on one, and the confidence that comes out as they are reconnecting with their body, feeling safe enough in their body again, and being able to make decisions that feel really good.
Yes, and it makes me think about those who are doing this work, starting to get more connected and are starting to realize, oh, wow, a lot in my life does not look the way that feels good anymore. I'm outgrowing this. What would you say to those who are kind of in that in between point of it's scary to make change, it's scary to evolve? What would you say to her?
I would say that we don't have to make changes, drastic changes, go from one thing to the other really quickly. I would encourage the women who are actively, intentionally working on themselves and making these moments for themselves and having these conversations with themselves to keep going, to keep getting curious about that. I think, in that season of life, that's where we're balancing the masculine and the feminine. So, in that feminine way, we are like, okay, we're feeling this. Yes, this is where we're wanting to go. Can we be in our masculine also and be like, okay, we can make a plan for that. We can make a plan to transition from job A to job B, for example, or to spend less time with those friends that aren't really friends because they don't make me feel very good about myself. I think that, again, coming back to that safety piece, we don't have to go cut the fat really quickly and go jump straight from one thing to the other. Be really intentional about that self-talk. So the way that we speak to ourselves is so important. And when we start to recognize, oh, okay, that is where I want to go, but that's when, I love the examples that you used of the doubt comes up, or the, oh, what will people say? What will people think? We can go really gently with ourselves, but also intentionally. Like, don't lose focus of that. Recognize where something is an insecurity and work with that. So, one of the greatest things that I've ever done in my life is continue a dialogue with the different parts of myself. This is something that I really encourage. And there's actually free resources on my website that have different journal prompts. So when something comes up, so say a woman has started making changes and started making moves, but then our old friend doubt comes in and starts to say, "Oh, but what are people gonna say? What are people gonna think of you?" In this way of welcoming all parts of ourselves and being kind and compassionate to all parts of ourselves as they rise, this is where I would be encouraging her to have a dialogue with that part of ourselves and get curious about what it is that they're saying, that part of themselves is saying. So, for example, be like, okay, hey, doubt, how you going? We've come back here again. What do you have to say? What are you afraid of? And actually taking the time to be with that part of self and get really curious about what that part of you wants to say. And in this conversation, you could be really surprised, be really open-minded with what wants to come through. It could be, oh, but do you remember that time that I did do what I wanted and then Sally made fun of me? Be like, oh, okay, so there's a memory that comes through. Okay, yes. Well, that was the past and that was, an awful experience to happen. And maybe that might happen again, but do we really want to be friends with them if they treat us like that? And it's this way of being with the different parts of self, showing love and kindness to all of those different parts that want to come up rather than suppressing them or dismissing them and avoiding them, but actually having that conversation and being open to the wisdom that we can say back to ourself and back to those parts of self.
That was incredibly helpful, so beautifully said. And I'm curious from your perspective, if more people began reconnecting with their creativity, their body wisdom, their intuition, how do you think it would change the way we live and relate to each other?
Oh, that's a beautiful image to work towards, isn't it? I feel like the more that we do this work on ourselves, the more kindness there would be in the world, the more compassion there would be in the world, the more understanding, the less reactivity there would be. We would be able to really know that whatever someone is going through, however they might react in a situation, instead of going straight to judgment or going straight to brushing that person off, there is a moment there where we're like, hey, is there something that you need? There is a wider capacity to understand each other, to take the time to be with each other and not feel so alone, but also not feel so dismissive. There's deeper connection that can happen because when we're showing kindness and compassion to ourselves, we're able to show more kindness and compassion to each other. Yeah, I truly believe that, I feel like I live in a bit of a echo chamber because I am in circles where a lot of that is very present. And then it's quite harsh when I go to the supermarket and people are really rude or something like that. But I feel like the more intentionality that we have for our own self-compassion and personal growth, then the wider capacity we have for understanding and love and connection with others.
Yes, and I asked that question because I think it's so important that we understand where this can take you, the possibility, the potential that has been witnessed and that you felt and you speak so eloquently on and express that I really hope to see in the world like you started. Wouldn't that be a beautiful world to see? Because it starts with us. It starts with
Mhm.
us choosing a different path, a different container, a different relationship with our life and with ourselves and stepping outside. It is somewhat counterculture, and yet it is so true. It is the most true thing I think I have found in my life. And this has been such a beautiful conversation. And so I think the last question I have for you is after all of these years of exploring creativity, embodiment, intuition, and connection, the sacred connection, what do you feel is drawing us to these? What is that longing that we are exploring and searching for? And what have these practices really could offer them as they search into this space?
I feel like there is an innate yearning for connection and an innate yearning for deeper meaning in life. And we can get so caught up in just moving through the motions and being on the hamster wheel and in the rat race and all of these different things that I personally felt quite jarring to my body. And so, what this intentionality of being curious and finding modalities that worked for me allows is deeper connection and a deeper sense of self, but a deeper meaning to why we're here and what we're exploring as souls on earth.
Thank you for answering that. I think you're right on. And I mean, that feels really truthful to me. Is there anything else you want to leave the audience with around this topic?
I feel like I would just really encourage your listeners to, if they've resonated with anything that we've shared and spoken about today, to follow those impulses of getting curious about the intuition, how their intuition shows up for them, and to start that dialogue and conversation with different parts of themselves because it's very fruitful and fascinating what comes out.
I agree wholeheartedly to that. Yes, follow the impulse. Well, Cathy, this was such a beautiful conversation. Thank you for the time. While I will link all of your information in the show notes, please let my listeners know where they can find you and what you have going on.
Thanks, Olivia. It's been beautiful. Thank you so much for your questions. My business is called Intuitive Self. So my website is intuitiveself.com.au. I welcome people having an explore and a play there. That's where you can get my books and free resources and online courses. And if people have questions or curiosities, they can also book in a free 1 hour session where we can unpack and debrief some more. And I like to offer that because when I first started my journey, I was so hungry to learn about this work and different modalities. And I had beautiful opportunities to meet with different pioneers in the field and different people who then became mentors where were in conversation and I could pick up on different processes that were supportive so I could guide other people in those entry points that we spoke of and what might feel most tangible and most digestible for whatever season they are in their life.
Oh, that's incredible. Wow, I'm amazed. You're doing such beautiful, intentional, life-changing work. And so, what a beautiful offering. I'll make sure that that gets linked. So, if anyone wants to reach out, they can. And just thank you, Cathy. This was amazing. I think we could have kept going, but I loved the container and the conversation that we had here today.
Me too. Thank you so much. Thank you for what you're doing and what you're offering in the world.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here today. I am truly grateful you chose to spend this time with me and be a part of this community. If this episode resonated, I'd love for you to leave a rating and written review because it helps Intuition Unlocked reach more women who are ready to live clearer, bolder, and more self-led. As a thank you, screenshot your review and email it to me, and I'll send you a resource to support your next step. And until next time, root into your truth, rise into your power, and radiate your light.